Alright, everybody. Buckle up your freaking seatbelts. It's the big ticket item. It's the multicolored. It's where all the big stuff is. It's where all the cool stuff is. If you're looking for the stuff that is technically multicolored, but has like a bunch of kicker costs that are multicolored, look in the set, like the colored set reviews of the colors of the cards. Like I didn't want to put all the kicker stuff in the multicolored because that would make it like way longer than everything else. So those are not here. So don't look for those here. Anyways, this is a limited set review because I like watching them. I am doing them. They help me be accountable for my magic takes. If you want to know what some of the stuff on the slide says and why some of the times it says tier 3 and sometimes it says tier 1, I think you'll pick up on it pretty quick because it's pretty intuitive, but I do have like sort of a more data-centered like visualization on my channel on in a video that you can look at there if you want to know what stuff means. Anyways, let's just get started here. First card on the list, a Johny. He's been completed. One green-white Phyrexian, one green-white, and then a green-white Phyrexian. That has the completed ability for Planeswalkers. He has 3 abilities. You get the first one with a +1. You can reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature or Planeswalker card, you can draw it. Otherwise, you can put it on the bottom, and you can distribute +1/+1 counters among 3 target creatures. They gain vigilance until end of turn. So, yeah, this isn't great to me. You kind of already have to have a board for it to be good. If you have a board when you cast him, and you -3, it's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's a good thing to be. That probably wins you games by itself, but that's hard to, like, do I see there being a scenario where, like, alright, well, I played a 2-drop, I don't have a 3-drop, I should probably just play this on 3 and then plus it? Yeah, you should probably just do that, I would think. I think that it's better to do this than not spend your mana. On 3, but I also think that this is probably not incredible in terms of as planeswalkers go. There's also a -6 that you can actually is probably attainable if you just started at 4 and plus it, but it starts giving your opponent poison counters when you cast a creature or planeswalker spell, which is fine. It just means you cast 5 creatures and then your opponent dies, which is good. But it's probably like you're not going to get there in limited most of the time. Next, Benally's Ruin. White, black for a 3/3 with Menace. And you can pay white, black, tap it, sacrifice another creature, put a +1/+1 creature on each creature you control, which includes this. This card, for a rate at a rate basis, is really good, right? Like, it's a tier 1 at a rate basis. But the problem is the mana cost. Like, white, black is a lot. It's a lot. It's a big ask. It's not as big of an ask as, like, white, black, red or something, but it's still pretty big. Like, it's still pretty big. And even the dual lands can help you with this, but they also, like, not always, because then if you play too many of them, you're having a tapped 3rd land, and then you can't cast this on 3. So I sort of view this as a 4-mana card, and as a 4-mana card, it's pretty good still. That's sort of how I'm seeing this card most of the time. Is it's 4 mana, it's not easy to cast, but once you get it onto the battlefield, if you have stuff to sacrifice, this thing just makes all your stuff huge, huge. So, I mean, that's like very much so where you want to be, and that's all I have to say about you. Next, Archerbearer Blades. 2 red, white for a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You can reveal an equipment or vehicle card from one and then put it in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. Equipments you control have equip 1, and vehicles you control have crew 1. So it makes all your vehicles and equipments better. You find them when it enters the battlefield. There aren't actually any good equipments or any good vehicles in the entire set. So like, especially at commons, you're probably not going to have any, but interesting note, I don't know if this works with the, I think this works with the Kamigawa equipment creatures, so that's cool for like other formats that aren't the one that I'm talking about right now. But it's basically just a 4/4, but 4/4s are pretty good. There are some rare vehicles that do stuff, and if you have one of those, this maybe helps you find it, and then that's better. But you know, that's all, folks. Next, Baird, Archerbearer Recruiter. Red white for 2/2. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature you control with power greater than its base power, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. Again, your enlist creature has to survive for this to work, but I do think that there's going to be other ways to just boost your creature's power till end of turn with stuff, and then like even if you don't attack with it, it like does this, it triggers and makes a 1/1. And it does sort of force your opponent to trade more too with your enlist stuff, so that's good. But I don't think enlist is a very good mechanic. It's probably still just fine. Just makes a bunch of 1/1s. Tokens are good. Next, Balmor, Battle Mage Captain. It's blue-red for 1/3 with flying. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain trample until end of turn. So it basically just pumps your whole team. It's dangerous. It's good. It's good rate too. 2 mana 1/3 flying. It's not like terrible. Generally, most of the signpost uncommons are good rate because they are multiple colors. And sometimes it just burns people out. Sometimes this is just your finisher. Sometimes you just get there, you pump it twice, and then your team just deals like 10 damage to your opponent. So that's good. This and then there's like lightning strikes. You just play this and 2 lightning strikes, and your opponent's just like, oh, I'm dying now. You know. Next, Bortuk Bone Rattle, 4 black-green for a 4/4 with domain. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast this, you choose a target creature card in your graveyard. You return that creature to the battlefield if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of basic land types, so probably like 2 or 3. And otherwise, you put it into your hand. So it draws you. So it's a 4 mana 4/4 that draws you a card. But the card that you're drawing has to have been in your graveyard and be a creature card. So I don't know. Again, there's not a lot of mill. There's not a lot of mill. So I think this is just really expensive and is hard to get working. I don't know. I also have a hard time with signpost uncommons that are like really expensive because generally you want them to be cheap because you want to run multiples of them. But like when you have 2 6-mana cards, it becomes hard to run other big stuff in your deck. Like if this is supposed to be the best card in your deck, like you want to run multiple of them, but then you're running multiple 6-drops, and it's probably fine, but it does sort of force you to be slower. So I don't know. I don't think this is going to be the strength of black-green, but I think black-green might be fine. Next, Alicia Core, Sadistic Pilgrim, white-black for a 2/2 with Death Touch. When another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. Whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. I mean, this is just incredible. This is just so good. I mean, it's really efficient creature. If you're sacrificing stuff, if your opponent is getting drained, like you're gaining life, it does everything. It drains your opponent, it gains you life. You're just happy. You're happy when you cast this. You cast this card on 2. Like I cast this card on 2. I'm like, my opponent's like, oh man, it's like it's on now. It's like this is tough. So yeah, this thing's great. Next, Urtai Resurrected, 2 blue-black for the 3/2 with flash. When it enters the battlefield, you can counter a spell and destroy a planeswalker. If you do either of those things, the controller of the spell or the creature draws a card. So you're 1-for-1ing here, right? You're destroying something or countering something, and your opponent's drawing the card back, but you get your creature, so you have something. So this is good. This is good. So like you look at the card and you're like, it sucks because they're getting their card back, but like you're getting a 3/2 out of the deal, right? Like it's possible that your opponent's attacking you and you cast this and blow up their 5/5 and then block a 3/3 or something, and then you're like you're not really 2-for-1ing them, but you're, you know, you're at least making it like you're getting them. I think this is just a good card. I don't think it's a card that's going to be like, man, I need to play blue-black to play this card. But it also allows you to counter stuff, which is good too. You can counter an activated ability or triggered ability, though you probably shouldn't ever do that. It would probably even be better to just flash this out as a 3/2 instead of countering the ability and letting them draw a card. But yeah, so I don't know. It's fine. It's good. Next. Garna, Bloodfist of the Keld. 1 black, red for a legendary 4/3. When another creature you control dies, draw a card if it was attacking. Otherwise, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. It's pretty good. Solid. Happy with this. Like it. Good card. Does a lot of the stuff you want when you're attacking. It does have some mana requirements and colors that generally don't do especially well with meeting mana requirements or fixing you, but it does give you value when your stuff dies, and generally a lot of times your stuff is dying when it's attacking, so you're probably drawing cards, and that's good. So I think this is just a good card. Next, Ivy, Gleeful Spell Thief. 2 mana, green and a blue for a 2/1 flying. When a player casts a spell that targets only a single creature other than Ivy, you may copy that spell, and the copy targets Ivy. I wonder, weird rules note, if your opponent has one of these in play and they target that, I assume you can't copy it. Because it's also rules that don't matter but are interesting to think about. Anyways, yeah, this is pretty much just a 2/1 flyer for 2, which is pretty good, so I don't know, nothing to complain about here. 2 mana 2/1 flyers tend to be decent. They sometimes you can put like an extra aura on this if you want, which is pretty good. Or like if you like, for God forbid, you use a combat trick on something that's not Ivy and you want to target Ivy, that seems pretty good. So that's sort of like your win there. All right. Next, please. Johora, Ageless Innovator, blue-red for 2/3 that you can tap, and then eventually it casts artifacts for you if you tap it enough times. There aren't good artifacts, so yeah. So it's just kind of a 2 mana 2/3 that costs 2 colors, so that's like a 2/3 card for me. I'm not really super into it. Next, Jodah the Unifier, Wooburg for a 5/5 that makes all your legendary creatures bigger, and it also gives them Cascade if you cast them. I'm not going to bother reading the whole text exactly. That's kind of what it does. It's Wooburg. It's going to be really hard to cast in limited. I don't think you're going to have enough legendary creatures that you're going to want this. Technically, it's a 6/6, I guess, but yeah, it's no, it's a no for me, boss. Unfortunately, I'm crushing everyone's dreams. This is not the Commune War. It's not. It just isn't the Commune War. It doesn't win you the game on the spot like the Commune War did. So I think that it's worse. Next, King Darien, the oh no, the 48th. Yeah. Yeah, okay, we did it. 1 green white for 2/3 soldier. Other creatures you control get +1/+1, so it's a lord for everything. And you can pay 5 and not tap it, so you just pay 5. And you put a +1/+1 counter on this thing, and you create a token. So, and you sacrifice it, and then your tokens get hexproof and indestructible. This thing just seems like absolute house. It just seems incredibly good. Makes tokens by itself in the late game, makes the tokens bigger, puts counters on itself. Just really, really good. Next, Lagamos, Hand of Hatred. 1 black-red for a 1/3. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you create a 2/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste, and you sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So you just make a 2/1 every time, and it attacks. And you can tap it in Demonic Tutor if you have 5 or more creatures die this turn, which you probably aren't having happen very much in limited. So But yeah, no, Jadar is just a good card, and this is kind of like a little bit of a like it's a worse Jadar, but it's still good. Jadar was just so good that this is still good, and you can use the 2/1s for sack stuff also. So yeah, happy with it. Next, Marina, Scholar of Antiquity, 1 red-green for the 3/3. Tap an untapped non-token artifact you control, and you can add Forest. Tap 2 untapped non-token artifacts you control. Exile the top card of your library, and you may play it this turn. But this doesn't really do anything unlimited again because there aren't artifacts that are good to be playing. So this is not really doing it for me. It's basically just a 3-mana 3/3 with extra color requirements. So no thanks. Next, Nail Avizioa Aeronaut, 2 green-blue for a 2/4 flying. When it deals combat damage to a player, look at the top X cards of your library, which are just domain related. Where X is the number of basic types. As you control, you put one of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom in random order. You don't even draw a card, which is sad. I wish that you did. That'd probably be too. I don't know. Would it be too good? I don't know. Maybe. If you have all 5 of the basic land types, you draw a card. But you know, you probably don't. So again, I'm hoping the domain, like the full domain meme deck, works, but I don't think that it does. So I'm gonna be a downer instead. Next, Najal, the Stormrunner. 2 blue-blue-red for a 5/4. You can cast sorcery spells as though they had flash, and whenever it attacks, you may pay 2. If you do, when you cast the next instant or sorcery spell this turn, you copy it. You may choose new targets with a copy. So this thing just beats. Just seems great. You're getting decent stats for 5 mana. You can copy your stuff. You can cast sorceries at instant speed, which is always nice. Sometimes, doesn't always really. Generally, your sorceries you want to cast at sorcery speed, but sometimes it's nice to cast them at instant speed. Yeah, it's cool. It's a good card. So that's all I got to say. I mean, all the side post uncommons sort of end up in the same tier where it's like, yep, this is good. That's why it's 2 colors. They sort of are cards that you want to have in your decks, and that's why there are reasons to be those 2 colors generally. Next, the meta, Primeval Warden, 2 black-green for 3/4 with reach. Whenever a creature an opponent controls would die, exile instead. When you do, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. You can sacrifice a sapling, and this thing gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Or you can sacrifice 2 saplings by paying 1 and a black, and you draw a card. So it just seems good. Just creates value for you when your opponent's stuff dies, so opponent doesn't want to like attack you. It also keeps their stuff out of their graveyard, which matters sometimes. Yeah, it's just a good card. It's just really annoying. Your opponent has to get rid of it. And it's not enormous, but it is a 3/4 for 4, so it's not terrible. It's possible this is only a tier 2, but I think it's good enough to be in the tier 1 zone here. Next, Queen Alendel of Rudark. Green, white for a star. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control. If one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus a 1/1 white soldier creature token are created instead. So basically just tax on a token to all your token makers. It does need a lot of help. It starts off probably as like a 3-mana, well, it starts off as a base 3-mana 1/1. You really need to, like, if your deck is mono token makers, this thing is great. If your deck is not mono token makers, this thing is probably not very good, and also requires white to cast on 3, which is really hard. It's not a guarantee. Not something, like if it was green to cast on 3, I'd be like much more like, okay, maybe, I mean, green is sort of more doable because green tends to be the color that you're fixing from as opposed to the color you're fixing to. White's tough, and I'm pessimistic about a lot of these. Next, Rada, Coalition Warlord, 2 red-green for 3/3 with domain. When it becomes tapped, another target creature you control gets +X/+X until end of turn. X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. So it gives your another creature big, but the problem is you have to have another creature to attack with, and this is only a 3/3-minute attack, so it just gets blocked and then it dies. So I don't know. This isn't. It's a 4/4 that has to. It's a hill giant that has to attack to do something, and it just attacks as a hill giant. It doesn't even buff itself. It can't even buff itself. It has to buff something else, which just seems really bad to me. So I'm not really. I think this card's pretty bad. Next, Wrath, Weatherlight, Stalwart. White blue for a 1/3. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control, which includes this one if you do draw a card. Creatures, and it's 3 white. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain vigilance until end of turn. So, yeah, this just seems good. Again, with the unicorn ability, they're like, nope, under no circumstances are we reprinting this ability. It was too good. They didn't even make it like 2 white. They were just like, nope, it's got to be 3 white. Can't have it. Can't have it. Unicorn was too strong. So we're nerfing them all. But this just seems great. It draws you a bunch of extra cards if you like cast like. Imagine you like end step instant. You like end step instant to do something to your opponent's stuff, and then you tap 2 dudes, draw a card. Just like that's great. This has what's it called? Siege zombie or not siege zombie? Larder zombie vibes. Next, 2 name that I can't pronounce of Urbog. 2 white/black for the 3/3 with vigilance and word 2. Other zombies you control have vigilance. Whenever another legendary creature you control dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary and it's a 2/2 black zombie in addition to its other types. I don't think you're gonna have that many legendaries in your deck because this is limited, though it may come up. So I don't know. I think mostly it's just a 4-mana 3/3 vigilance with ward 2, which is fine. It's playable. It's not anything spectacular, but it does require 2 colors, and it's probably not something that you're really interested in. You almost certainly should not end up with this card in your deck in the first week of the format because people are just going to be drafting it. So that's about it. Next, Rith, Liberated Primeval. 2 red, green, white for a dragon that's flying and has ward 2. It's a 5/5. Other dragons you control have ward 2. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls was dealt damage this turn, or excess damage, create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. So, if you like attacked, right, and you traded like a 3/1 with your opponent's 2/2, and then played this, you'd get an extra 4/4 dragon for free. I mean, this thing is just great. It does include green in its casting cost, so it's probably the best at being fixed for you. This is probably worth splashing, although honestly, you're probably splashing red, would be my guess. Because I don't think you're going to want to be base Gruul, ever, in any set, ever, in history of planet Earth. So, Gruul just isn't allowed to have nice things. So yeah, that's kind of it with this. It's just a big dragon. That's good. Next, Rivaz of the Claw. 1 black/red for a menace 3/3. You can tap to add 2 mana of any combination of colors, but you can only spend this mana to cast dragon spells. Once during each of your turns, you may cast a dragon creature spell from your graveyard, and when you cast a dragon creature spell from your graveyard, it gains when this creature dies, exile it. So it just makes your dragon stuff better, but there really isn't much dragon stuff. Just a 3 mana 3/3 menace is fine though. So yeah. There's not enough dragons for it to be like really, really good, but it's fine. Next, Rona, Sheoldred's Faithful. 1 blue/black for 3/4. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses a life. You can just cast this from your graveyard by discarding 2 cards in addition to paying its other costs, which is really nice. The effects are minimal. It's not an enormous creature, but the ability to just get it back without having to pay anything other than just like exiling some other cards from your graveyard is really, really nice. There's a couple of escape style effects like this. It's interesting that that kind of mechanic came back here. All right. Next, Rulik Mons, Warden Chief. 1 red, green for a goblin 3/3 with menace. Whenever it attacks with the top card of your library, if it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. If you didn't put a card on the battlefield this way, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. So this is pretty good. It's hard to block because it's got menace. It does. Now, when you block it, it does die. It's a 4-mana 3/3, but it finds you some stuff. You know, it puts lands onto the battlefield for you, and then draws you towards actual spells. So, yeah, happy with it. Seems good. Makes tokens too. So I think this is pretty good. Now again, I don't think it saves Gruul. I think Gruul is still bad, but you know, it's fine. Next, Shauna, Purifying Blade. Bant for a 3/3 with lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay X. If you do draw X cards, X can't be greater than the amount of life you gain this turn. This card's pretty good. The casting cost is, again, a concern. There's not good, cheap fixing. There's some dual, like the dual lands or whatever. You should probably splash this card, right? Like if you're playing green-white or blue-white, you should probably be, or green-blue, you should be splashing this card, probably, if you have the dual lands to do it, without making your mana terrible. But this card is mostly just like a 3/3 lifelinker that's good. You know what I mean? Like the 3/3 lifelink, the lifelink part of this is really the part that's great. But like if you don't gain life, you can't get the cards either. But like I think just like a 3/3 lifelink is like a good card. So I don't know. If you can cast this card, you should put it in your deck. But probably don't go like really hard out of your way to do it unless you have a bunch of white cards that gain you life. Next, Sulfur the Tainted. 2 blue, black, red for a 5/5, and it does a bunch of stuff. Eventually, your opponent gets control of it. Like you draw a card, each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life, and then it deals 3 damage to one target creature or planeswalker. And your opponent gets it, and they get to hit you with it. I don't know. It doesn't seem like I feel like you don't win the game by this time that this kills your opponent, and you have to pay 3 colors to cast it, so it seems kind of seems kind of bad, yeah. I don't know, not super into it. Next, Soul of Windgrace. 1 black, red, green for a 5/4. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, you can put a land card from a graveyard onto the battlefield tapped into your control. You can pay green, discard a land card, gain 3. You can do 1 in a red to draw a card, or 2 in a black to gain indestructible until end of turn and tap it, and you have to discard lands to their abilities as well. It's pretty good. I think this is good. It doesn't have flying or anything, but like you know, if you have lands in your hand in the late game, you can hold up 2 in a black and attack with this thing, and it just, you know, it puts the lands onto the battlefield eventually. You can just start like paying 1 in a red to discard cards, land cards, and draw, and then you attack with this thing and you put the land onto the battlefield. It's like, that's pretty good. I think this is good. I don't think it's tier 1 because I do think, again, the color requirements are a lot and limited. It's not easy. I'm not inspired by the ability to splash, but this is good. This is a good card. It probably doesn't like win you the game by itself. It can be annoying to remove, but you have to have a land in your hand, and you have to have the swamp up. But if you do, it's hard for your opponents to deal with. So it's pretty good. Next, Sten Paranoid Partisan. 1, or no, not 1. It's white blue for a 2/2. It enters the battlefield, chooses a card type other than creature or land. Spells of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. You could bounce it, and I guess you could choose the type again if you want, but basically it just protects itself. In limited, this doesn't really do anything. It just kind of like yeah, it can make your instants or sorceries or enchantments, or I guess your planeswalkers cost 1 less to cast. But it's a 2-mana 2/2. It requires 2 different colors. You need to have all those different types of spells in your hand. It isn't especially great to me. I don't think it's really like, yes, you can bounce it to make it so your opponents can't remove it, but are you gonna want to keep 3 mana up to do that? I don't think so. So, yeah. And it comes back at the beginning of the next end step, which is kind of bad, because you'd rather it just come back, but yeah. Next, Tatyava, Steward of Tides. Green, blue for a 3/3. Land creatures you control have flying. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands, up to 1 target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with haste. It is still a land. This seems incredibly great. Is it incredibly great? I don't know. But if you can do like some, I mean, this is like Simic ramp shenanigans, standard Simic ramp shenanigans going on here. Look, believe me, I want this to work, but will it work? I don't know. I hope so. It seems cool. It does make all your land stuff fly. If you just start beating your opponent with lands. You do this plus like Field of the Dead, which is like, oh, I guess I'm just making lands my deck now. So it's pretty cool. So, yeah, I like it. Next, Tori Davenant, Fury Rider. 1 red, white for a 3/3 Vigilance Trample. Whenever it attacks, all other attacking creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn, which is good. That's a good thing to do. Other red attacking creatures you control get trample, and other white untap other white attacking creatures you control. So yeah, I mean it's fine. I don't. It has to attack to do anything. Again, the colors in the casting cost, I didn't mention on the last card, but yes, that too. The colors in the casting cost, although that one you don't need to play on turn 3. This one you need to play on turn 4, and if you want to play it on turn 4, you need to have red, white, which is tough. Again, in colors that don't necessarily do especially great at this sort of fixing thing, or want to be faster, this is not necessarily the type of thing you want to be doing. But, and its stats aren't great, right? It's a 3/3 for 4, Vigilance, which is whatever, but it's not winning you the game on the spot. I'm kind of not super high on this. I think I'm going to have to be surprised. All right. Tura Kenigard, Sky Knight. 2 white, blue for a 3/3 flyer. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. Why doesn't it create a bird? I wish that it created a bird. I'm sad. I don't think this is very good. 5 mana 3/3 flyer requires you to have double blue. But now at 5 mana, it doesn't really. We're starting to get to the point where you're like, yeah, you probably have double blue if you're playing blue, but it doesn't really block very well when it comes onto the battlefield, which you would like your 5-drop to kind of do. You need to cast stuff to make the tokens. How many instant sorceries can you really have in your deck? You can't have a deck with all instant sorceries unlimited, really. This isn't, it's not really early enough in the game to be guaranteed that you're going to get the payoff from it. So I don't think this is very good. Next, Urg, Spawn of Turg. Green, black, green, rather, for a star 5. Its power is equal to the number of land cards in your graveyard at the beginning of your upkeep. Look at the top card of your library, you may put that card in your graveyard. And you can pay 2 to sacrifice land and gain 2 life. So I guess you just start putting lands in your graveyard. But like, what if you like want to draw land? Like, so you play this on turn 3. It's like, well, I would like to hit my 4th land to play a 4-drop here. And like, are you really like playing off curve? That just seems bad. I don't know. The ability seems like it doesn't really matter very much. I'm not super into this card. It does help enable your reanimator stuff that you don't want to do because reanimator sucks for the 8,000th consecutive format in a row. Yeah, that's kind of it. I don't think it's really especially incredible. Next, Vohar, I guess. Valadian Desecrator. Blue-black for a 1/2. You can tap to loot. If you discard an instant or sorcery card with the looting ability, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And you can also pay 2, sacrifice it, and cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard this turn. If that spell would be exiled, you just exile it. It seems great. It just seems like a lot of value. I know 2 mana, but you're not paying any mana for the looting, which is nice. And you get to cast stuff from your graveyard. You get to pay 2 and cast stuff back from your graveyard. You don't have to loot if you don't want to. You drain your opponent when you loot. It just seems good. I'm a looting believer. I'm a believer that looting is good. I like Merfolk Looter. I'm a truther of the Merfolk Looter variety, and this is kind of that. So Next, Zar Onjin, Scion of Ephra. 3 green-white for a 4/4. When it becomes tapped, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with toughness less than the number of basic land types you control. So basically buffs all your tokens, and maybe your 2/2s sometimes. But it is 5 mana, so it's pretty likely that you're going to have 3 types if you have them, if you were trying to do the domain thing. So, I don't know. I think this seems pretty good. It does make all your stuff pretty, like, this could be a bit of a house. And notably, it becomes tapped, and not attacks. So, that is a thing that matters. With enlist, and the enlist is great with this thing. You enlist this thing, and it's like, oh, I'm just making all my stuff huge now. So this is kind of like my reason to have enlist cards in my deck. Is like, oh, this thing just is absolutely not, like, it's giving my enlist thing 4 power, and B, it's buffing every single token I have when I enlist it. Like, that just seems great. Next, all right, and last multicolored card is Zur, Eternal Schemer. White, blue, black for a 1/4 flyer. Enchantment creatures you control have Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof, and you can pay 1 and a white, and target non-1 enchantment you control becomes a creature in addition to its other types, and its base power and base toughness equal to its mana value. So you can make your sagas into dudes, but I believe the sagas still eventually sacrifice themselves after they're gonna die. I mean, this is just not worth it. Like, this is just not worth it. You just kind of like skipped over the thing. It's just not worth the 3 colors you're paying to do this. So I wouldn't recommend doing it. Is all. And that's it. And now I'm done with this section of the thing. So feel free to stick around. Again, if you missed it, the kicker stuff is not here. I don't know how you would have gotten here without knowing that, but yeah, they're in the individual colors, and yeah, I hope I rated these okay. These are always the toughest because it's like, you're kind of rating based on how good the archetype is too as a whole. You gotta sort of think about all that stuff. But yeah, that's it. I will see you if you stick around for the next one.